Yo, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast. And today, the queen of the L7C is back for her first episode of 2021, Chelsea Police. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing well. Happy to be back.
And we are happy to have you. And since it's your first one of 2021, just want to wish you a happy new year. Hopefully, you and your family had a safe, relaxing holiday season and are full back in the swing of things.
We are busy.
Oh, I bet, Miss PhD, you're going to be done this couple months, right?
That's the goal, barring anything catastrophic from happening. But things are moving. So hopefully in May, I have those letters behind my name.
And then we will move on to bigger and better things with you. And with letters, that is also going to be something we talk about in today's episode. We're going to give an update on the Atlanta Dream situation. We're going to talk about something that happened at the end of 2020, the Athletic posting their best moments of 2020 and why we have an issue with their best moments. We're going to talk about the firing of the Mets GM. We're going to talk about Trinity Rodman and how she was how she received some sexism. Maybe she doesn't even know who the guy is, but we're definitely going to talk about what happened. We're also going to talk about Sarah Thomas being the first woman to ref the Super Bowl. And with the letters, we are going to talk about something that also happened earlier this year with Dr. Joe Biden and the controversy from the Washington Post. And we're going to talk about Pardon the Interruption. So first, let's go back to the end of 2020. And the Athletic posted their top moments of 2020 sports moments that they had in tournament style bracket. And typically that's fine. A lot of people do that. But theirs had 0 women moments in that. Chelsea, you were the one who shared it with me. When you first saw that, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I didn't really think anything of it. And then I went back and looked at it a little bit closer. And the thing that sparked, my kind of ire against all of this was the fact that the NBA bubble was mentioned as a, top moment in sport, which is great. Yeah, I mean, what an accomplishment to be able to hold a professional league in the middle of a pandemic with the bubble, etc. But the ironic thing is the NWSL was the first league to do that successfully. They were the first professional team or professional league in the United States to return to play in a bubble format. And the WNBA did the exact same thing with their bubble. It was successful as well. And so to completely just ignore the fact that these 2 professional women's leagues had similar, if not more success than the NBA is ridiculous. I mean, we saw that viewership numbers for both the WNBA and the NWSL increased significantly, and not just a little. Like for the NWSL, it was more than 400 or 500% that they increased their viewership numbers, and that itself, I think, is a memorable sports moment. So to not even mention them in that conversation is ridiculous. But even more so, the thing that kind of threw me is the only thing that really had anything to do with women was the Marlins hiring of the first female GM in the MLB. which again is great. That was a stellar sports moment, but it was more women in sport adjacent. And they were giving credit to the Marlins for making that hire rather than giving her the credit for being in that role.
So do you think that it was just a lapse in whoever was making the brackets over there in the Athletic, or they just didn't care? Because that doesn't make sense that they would put the NBA bubble when the WNBA bubble was actually happening at the same exact time. I know they got a lot of flack in their comment section, and then I think they did a revised thing or a different tournament thing. But do you just think that they just completely forgot and it wasn't in their mind, or they just didn't care?
I would like to maybe say that it was an accident, but quite frankly, it's 2021, and at the end of 2020, an accident really doesn't cut it anymore. I mean, quite frankly, women's sports have been making massive strides, and news outlets, major networks still continue to not give them the credit and the exposure that they deserve. So while I like to think that maybe it was just something that happened and whoever created this just didn't do their due diligence, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's an excuse anymore. There are so many, prominent moments that have happened over 2020 that you simply can't not include them. And I know it was tough with the pandemic and things that happened prior to March or whatever, when the country kind of shut down and sports ultimately halted and whatnot. It's hard to remember all the things that have happened over the course of the year. But at the same time, that's your job as a news outlet, that you make sure that you go back and you understand or make sure you get all of those important moments, and simply not including women just is not a good excuse.
I think the timing of it's also funny too, because on our last one that we did together in 2020, I'm blanking on her name. She did the good video about 2020 being the year of the girl dad.
Oh, I can't think of her last name. Duncan?
Yeah, but we talked about that video in our last one, and then it was a couple weeks or so later when the Athletic did that. And if they just wanted top female sports moments, they could have just watched that tweet, because it highlighted a lot of them in soccer, tennis, everything. And the fact that none of them were on there, and that was just disappointing. And they got the ire of people, which they rightfully deserved. And then they'll have a whole year to make it up. And in 2021, when they do it again, it won't be that hard. I'm pretty sure they'll have a Sarah Fuller. I'm 100% sure she'll be on their bracket, and hopefully there'll be more going for it, but I just don't think they will mess that up again, or that's just bad press. And going from bad press to a person who's gotten bad press a lot of 2020, which we've talked about a lot, is Kelly Loeffler, the co-owner of the Atlanta Dream. We've talked about this on almost every one of our episodes about how she made comments about the league going away from political statements and Black Lives Matter and things like that. And she is a senator in Georgia. And now we are at the point where it's coming out that her ownership, or maybe the whole ownership, is close to being sold. I know that you've been following this story as well as I, and now we're at the point where she's going to sell her stake in the team, or the whole ownership's going to sell. Do you feel like the pushback from the WNBA and her players wearing shirts telling everyone to vote against her, and her actually losing that Georgia runoff, was just that letter to, yeah, I got to get off this team?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the WNBA to take such a stance against an individual who, I mean, rightly so, like she, pushed back against the Black Lives Matter movement and social justice and using their platform. And the WNBA, the Atlanta Dream, said, okay, bet, we're going to vote you out. We're going to make sure that you don't have a say in the federal government to have any, effect over things that happen. Because at the end of the day, like, you own a team or co-own a team that has a specific demographic of individuals on it, and you're effectively saying that those people don't matter. And I mean, if she didn't sell, I highly doubt any of those players were going to play for her. They certainly, in the new season, we're going to do something to say, hey, we're not putting up with this until she's gone. And the fact that the WNBA itself didn't do more to kind of push her out, and maybe they did behind the scenes, we just didn't see it kind of in the public eye, blows my mind a little bit, just because of how, progressive the WNBA has been and how supportive some of the upper management and the commissioner have been for the athletes, and not to really get themselves involved in a situation like that kind of blows my mind. But, at the end of the day, they use their platforms and they were successful in helping her opponent get elected. And, I can't think of another time where something like that has happened. And I saw a stat that said that before the Atlanta Dream, Sue Bird, wore the Vote Warnock shirts, that he was polling at 9%. And he ended up winning. And that's just unbelievable. It's incredible. And it shows just how much of a voice that women and WNBA players in particular have. And so I certainly commend them for the work that they did and getting people involved and, making sure that they got registered to vote. And, Georgia's, some of their elected officials did a really good job in that respect too. Stacey Abrams, massive in getting people registered and making sure that they voted. So, it's amazing what we can do when we have something in our in our minds and in our hearts. And, I just commend the WNBA for all the work that they've done.
Yeah, at this point now, I've been trying to see it from all the different angles, because she's been an owner for this team for a while and no one had an issue with her until she said what she said, which is rightfully so. But if I'm her and I know I'm in an election year and I know I just don't know why I say that. I really don't. I from a strategic political standpoint, that was just a terrible. That's the reason she lost. Like it's the 100% reason she lost. I don't know why she said that in any year, let alone an election year for herself. And with all of the WNBA athletes and players who all have their big social media platforms, and then you have everyone liking, retweeting, sharing on Instagram, those same things, spreading the word. And then you have the other people outside of the WNBA, like LeBron James and them saying stuff like that, who I don't understand what her advisory team was doing from that standpoint, because as bad as it is, a lot of these athletes have cult followings and they're going to listen to whatever the athlete said. So if you say that, and then you're just painted in a way that none of these fans on the team are going to vote for you, and you lost. And then my other thing on this that we talked about is when we looked up who the other co-owner of the team is, and she's on the board of trustees of Spelman College, and she does all of these things. So I don't understand why she never said anything to Kelly saying, hey, this isn't okay. I understand that you don't want political statements in sports, which that's your opinion. That's fine. But for you to just say that to denounce Black Lives Matter when a lot of your players are African American, that just wasn't smart. So I just don't understand what she was thinking.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then the other thing is, so we were talking about, bad press or erasing women in sport. Well, Sports Illustrated, came out with their social justice or activist individuals of the year or something along those lines. And we had people like LeBron James, Naomi Osaka, but the one that was a little bit controversial was Breanna Stewart. And certainly she's done a ton of work to, promote social justice and be at the forefront of some of this. But, people had an issue with it, that it wasn't either a Black WNBA player or the WNBA as a whole, because collectively they all came together and, for the most part, maybe there were some that didn't necessarily agree with this, but we really didn't hear about it. They all came together and, had this unified message about equality and fighting racial injustice and being activists, etc. And for the WNBA not to be recognized as an activist of the year, whatever that title was, people were really upset. And I agree with that. I think, Breanna Stewart's done a lot and she's, been at the forefront of the WNBA, but to erase an entire group of people to put one individual at the face of that movement, I think really rubbed people the wrong way. Because again, it's this thing of you're effectively erasing Black women, and that happens time and time again. And unfortunately, in this day and age, there's no reason to do it. And you could have picked, Maya Moore. You could have picked any number of Black athletes or Black women that are in the WNBA to be the face of that movement.
The other two were LeBron and who was the other one you just said?
Naomi.
Yeah. The only because Breanna Stewart, she just won the title this year after coming off the injury, if I remember correctly, because I watched that game. So that'd be the only reason I could think that they would pick her, just because of that narrative. And then the other two won championships in this time frame. And then I understand. And then they should have done the team, like the whole WNBA. I agree with that. But anyone who, because she didn't want to be like that face, like she was just chosen by ESPN. So any hate towards her isn't needed. But I agree that it should have been the whole WNBA as a whole, because they've all been collectively about the social justice thing. Former President Barack Obama even stated that he wasn't surprised that they were leading the movement. They've been doing this for many, many years now, them and the national women's soccer team. So I just think that's just the people at ESPN just picking a face who they think everybody knows and this, that, and then putting them on the front. But this is also the same company organization that doesn't have them on their tracker on the ESPN app that you so eloquently stated a couple weeks ago. So
yeah, and it wasn't that people were going after Breanna Stewart for being on the cover. They were really just upset with the organization for not considering the WNBA as a whole and picking that single athlete. And again, for all that she's done for the league, I'm sure it isn't a bad pick. But considering all that the WNBA has done collectively, it just didn't make sense in the context of what the award was for that moment.
Yeah, it should have just been the whole WNBA. The deal hasn't been done yet. We don't even know who's buying the team from Atlanta yet. There's been no public names said yet. So we're going to definitely keep track of that and see how it goes going forward. Another thing that was really made news recently, this past couple of weeks, was Trinity Rodman. And Chelsea, I would just like for you to just chronicleize how we got to Trinity, who is the daughter of NBA Hall of Famer Dennis Rodman, but she was selected number 2 overall in the draft. But some people don't want to call her Trinity, and I know that has you super hot. So let's jump into that.
Yeah, so, I saw a tweet from a reporter. I don't know who this guy is. After this happened, his profile was effectively gone, no trace of him. So he basically posted an article that said Dennis Rodman's daughter declares for the NWSL draft. Somebody, took issue with what he said and quoted it and said, well, why don't you try using her name? And he responded, her name is Dennis Rodman's daughter until she proves otherwise. And quite frankly, that got me pretty fired up. Like, yes, Dennis Rodman is a massive figure. He is her dad, but to not even mention her name, like, that's ridiculous. And then on top of that, when somebody calls you out for it, to double down and say, nah, that's her name until, she proves otherwise. You would absolutely not do that to a male athlete who has a famous dad, without a doubt. Like, we talk about, LeBron's kids or Dwayne Wade's kids, you know their names.
Mm-hmm.
And they're often referenced by their names. They're not just LeBron James's son or Dwayne Wade's son. And in some cases, yes. But for someone to blatantly just be like, yeah, I'm not even going to mention her name, like, that's a load of crap, in my opinion, for lack of a better term, I guess. So, draft night came and she got drafted number 2, which I think people were shocked that she went that high because, she's pretty young. She decided to go pro, which great for her. I don't know a whole lot about her as a player, but she's been with the national team, maybe at the youth level. But, and again, that storyline of her being Dennis Rodman's daughter came up time and time again. And I give her a lot of credit because, during her draft interview after she was drafted, she said, I want to prove that I am Trinity Rodman and not just Dennis Rodman's daughter. And I think, that shows that she reads social media or somebody told her what happened and she's ready to prove the haters wrong. But again, like, this idea that a female athlete is only as good as her parents or her brother or somebody else famous, that's a man, just is ridiculous.
So since that tweet, I've been trying to think of what angle the guy was coming from to think of anything to try and relate to him. He honestly could have just, here's this another thing, folks. Sometimes just don't click send. After whoever corrected him said Trinity Rodman, he could have just said noted. End of that. This whole thing is not a thing. But then what got him into trouble was his comment after the Trinity thing is like, she is Dennis Rodman's daughter until further notice. And he was wrong. And I just think that, I don't know if he was coming from his own personal experience, because we've all experienced something in life where you work really hard and someone gets ahead of you because they are connected to someone else. That's their parents, that's their siblings. I 100% get that. And it's happened to everyone before, and it sucks. But I don't think in this situation that was not the move whatsoever. And if he was trying to relate to that and it's like, oh, she's only good because she's Dennis Rodman's daughter, that's not true. I mean, just because you have the last name, you still have to go out, you still have to work out, you still have to hundreds of shots on goal, you still have to condition, you still got to learn the game. So that was the only thing I was trying to think, like, where was this guy coming from? And the other thing with this guy is I personally am kind of sick of the whole, you say something wrong and then you delete your profile and have no accountability. I personally also think if he was going to tweet and he said that thing and he got smoked in the comments, he could just say, hey, I apologize. I made a mistake. Learn from it. Move on. That's it. But the fact that he deleted his whole account, and it's probably made a different account just under a different name saying the same stuff, I'm personally sick of that, because that's typically what happens after someone says a comment about women's sports and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no issues with people utilizing their connections and taking advantage of opportunities, whether it's, your parents are professional athletes or, those are, like you said, those things are going to happen. And again, particularly with women, you have to take those opportunities when you can. So, the fact that she is his daughter certainly put her in a position to be able to do some incredible things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, not to give her credit for her accomplishments just because she is that person's daughter doesn't make any sense. And I completely agree with you about deleting his profile. Like, he had to have known that when he, maybe not when he made that tweet initially, not using her first name, but when somebody came, not, and she didn't even come at him in a way that was rude or anything. She was just like, hey, why don't you use her name? And the fact that he doubled down and then, had the nerve to delete his profile, like, if you had to be aware of what you were doing with that second tweet in that moment. And so if you're gonna hit send and you're gonna take that approach, then you better be willing to take the heat for it. And like, it's absolutely unbelievable that he ended up deleting his profile, because he clearly knew what he was doing. He was being a troll. He was being unfair. He was being flat out rude, and people called him on it. And if you're somebody who can't handle when somebody calls you out, don't be on Twitter. Don't send stupid shit. Like, just be just be a normal human being, be nice, and move on. I just, yeah, like you, it drives me nuts when people make, and maybe it was a simple mistake. I don't know. I don't know this individual. I don't know what he tweets or, what he writes on a regular basis, but just own up to what you did and move on. People are going to find the next thing to talk about. So it's not really that big of a deal, but don't be, a douchebag about it and delete your profile and not take ownership for what you just did.
My other thing with deleting the profile is, like, I don't get why, because if you're tweeting from a Samsung Galaxy tablet, an iPad, iPhone, any phone, even heck, a flip phone, you're getting screenshot. So it's not like you delete your Twitter and all those tweets are gone forever. Once one person screenshots and it's in a thread, it's there forever. So that's the other thing too. Like, if it's already going to be there forever and then they find you on Twitter and then you're saying some stuff and they're like, oh, is this you? And post that picture, we're right back to where we started. So it's like, you already know it's getting screenshot. You already know it's getting shared. So you might as well just stay. Like, that's the thing too. Once you tweet it or post it, it's there forever, no matter what you think you're deleting, but it's going to be there. So he was an idiot too. And just to connect to Trinity on Pardon the Interruption, Wilbon and Kornheiser didn't know what like, I don't even know what they were calling. What were they calling it? The professional?
The national, like the professional soccer league or women's professional soccer league or something along those lines. And the point that, pretty sure her name's Kelsey Trainer. She's a lawyer. She's very into women's rights and sport in particular. And, she quoted this and was like, you need to do better, because you would never call the NBA the men's professional basketball league or, something. You would make sure that you know what the name of that professional league is called, and not even the NBA, even if it was maybe in Canada or some other men's sport that's, not as common to us in the United States or whatever. You would make sure that you know the name of the professional league, and to not do the same for women's soccer and the NWSL is it's unacceptable. And the fact that they were talking about Trinity Rodman and the draft and her connection to Dennis Rodman and yada, 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 like, it's not that hard to look up what that acronym means. And if you're going to run a story, you, as TV personalities, as a news network or, a sports network, it's your job to be as accurate and precise as humanly possible. And so why would you not take the extra 2 seconds to make sure you know what NWSL stands for, what the professional league is called? Like, there's absolutely no excuse.
Yeah, my thing with that is just laziness. I mean, they wanted to put Trinity Rodman's stuff out there because she went high and she's Dennis Rodman's daughter. And that was just laziness. But ESPN, which they'll always say they champion this and that and this and that, but then you see the small things like that. It's like, are you really championing women's stuff, or are you just putting it out there just because it was a famous person's child who went number 2? But I just equate that to laziness. But to go off of ESPN, let's go to some Major League Baseball and let's go to the Mets. The Mets GM, Jared Porter, was fired for explicit text from 2016. That's another thing, just going back to the tweets. I don't get it because everything gets screenshot these days. So I don't know why you just didn't think these would disappear. And it looked like he was sending explicit text to a reporter back in 2016. And now it's surfaced. And now he's out of a job. When you first saw that story, what did you think about that whole situation?
Well, a little background on the situation to start out. She was a foreign reporter. He sent her numerous text messages. She didn't respond, and he continued to send them. Then he sent some explicit pictures, but said they were stock photos and not him. Yada yada yada, the whole thing. But I was reading an article where she basically said that she did not come forward, earlier prior to right now because being whatever country she is from, anything that's viewed as like a sexual scandal or, whether she's the victim or the perpetrator, she could, there could be serious consequences for her in her home country. So that is part of why she did not come forward initially. So, all of that was in the ESPN article about all of this. Mina Kimes was a huge part of this story in doing the investigation. And so, this happened while he was with the Cubs. He recently got hired with the Mets. And, I give the Mets a lot of credit for taking action very, very quickly. A lot of times we see professional sport organizations, say, well, we need to conduct an internal investigation. This is going to take some time. And then we oftentimes see things don't happen or enough doesn't happen when situations like this arise. We kind of have seen something similar with the Washington football team. There have been significant allegations against Dan Snyder and the owner and some other people that are involved in the organization, and still nothing really has been done about that. But anyway, going back to the Mets, I really do give them a lot of credit because it was less than 12 hours from when this story broke to when he was fired. And I think that's a step in the right direction. And it shows that, maybe there's a little bit of a change happening in the way that these situations are handled. But also, when there are text messages and pictures and things, you can't dispute that. There's no way you can dispute the fact of what happened. And so, they did the right thing and showed that this kind of behavior is not acceptable. And I give, the president or CEO or whoever, the owner, whoever it was that made the decision, I give them a lot of credit. And they came out and said that integrity matters. And we as an organization, if we're going to, say that it matters, then we need to act. And so, good for them. But the other thing is I saw a tweet that, when he interviewed for this position, he got really good references from people. And a reporter asked, did you get any references from women? And that individual responded and said, no, we didn't. And that, and somebody I saw in the comments was like, well, there's not women in high ranking positions to ask for a reference. And, somebody else came back and said, there are people that are in women that are in PR, front office positions, maybe not in the, not CEOs or CFOs or anything like that, but there are women in baseball organizations, the professional baseball organizations, that you could have asked easily. And maybe something else would have come up before they even hired him. Who knows? But I think it's very interesting that somebody asked that question, number one, and number two, that somebody that high in an organization wouldn't even think to get, perspectives from a diverse group of people, because how you treat people matters. And certainly he's going to treat, based on what happened with him, he's going to clearly treat men differently than he does women. And so, if just one woman had said, no, don't hire this individual, maybe, he wouldn't have gotten fired or have gotten hired in the first place.
Couple of things. on that. So the timeline was, and this is from July 19th to August 10th, he sent 62 straight unanswered text messages to the
That's the other
reporter.
thing. I mean, if a woman does not respond to you that many times, leave them alone. Like, clearly they are not interested. So
Yeah.
that's number one is an issue. Like, if you are man, woman, whoever, if someone does not respond to you, just let it go. Clearly they don't want to talk to you. If they wanted to talk to you, they would respond, call you, whatever. So that should be a sign number one. And then to send pictures that she clearly did not ask for is another issue. Like, if somebody wants an explicit picture, they'll ask. They'll make that very clear to you. And she, I believe, made it very clear that that is not what she wanted.
Yeah, because again, they're of the richer high class. So I don't know in this guy's friend group, but I'm pretty sure everyone has like that friend group message, and he's probably telling them that he's texting. Like, if one of his friends asks, like, yeah, if she hasn't messaged you back, man, maybe you should give it up. But I don't know. That's just from a normal person's perspective. Once you get to like 2-3 text messages, you tell your buddy, yeah, I don't think it's in the cards for you, man, let alone 62 straight. And then with the naked photos and things like that, then him saying that's not him from another side, that's actually kind of creepy if you're just going on Google and taking random people's naked pictures and sending them. And then there was another thing that was brought up about this. Paige Spiranak, she is a golfer. She talked about how this happens to her all the time. And I know who Paige is. I've seen her golf before, and she's gotten flack from the golf community because she's very attractive and things like that. You know the whole spiel, the way you dress, blah, 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 blah. And she said that this happens a lot in like her DMs on Instagram and stuff like that. And I just wanted to bring that up because just because this story came out and you gave them credit, they got rid of him quickly. This isn't like a one-time thing. This is happening all over then, now, and probably forever. It's a huge problem. It's underreported. That was just something I wanted to bring up. So
yeah, and I saw another tweet too. Somebody had said that they had a student, a professor somewhere, had a student who wanted to get into scouting. She's a woman, but said, I know there's so much sexism in baseball that I don't know that I want to put myself through all of that. And to me, that's a culture issue. There should be no reason that if I want to be a baseball scout or a football scout or be a baseball coach or a football coach, there should be no reason that I'm scared to do that because I'm afraid that I'm, going to be, harassed or, people aren't going to believe that I can do my job or simply just discounted because I'm a woman and baseball and some of those other sports are a man's club. Like that, as we've talked about before, like we are breaking through every day. And for that to still be an issue and like you mentioned, it's going to be an issue forever because, God forbid there's an attractive woman who does a really good job at whatever it is. And that can't possibly be true at the same time that you can't be attractive and good at what you do. And that suddenly that means that men can, come into your DMs and talk about how attractive you are or, send explicit text messages or whatever to you and think that's okay. Like it's something that we as women deal with all the time. And, the reality is it's probably going to continue for a long time, but anything that professional leagues or, just sports people in general can do with the industry to show that that's not okay is a step in the right direction. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do and maybe it's never going to be perfect, but when young girls who are in college or even in high school who have aspirations for something simply don't want to put themselves through the possibility of being harassed or whatever else it is, that's an issue. And I take issue with that 100%.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if he ever gets a job again. I don't think he will in the foreseeable future. And with the culture thing, I mean, it even starts before people get to the big leagues. I mean, it can start as soon as elementary, middle school, parenting, all those type of things. Like, hey, this isn't okay. And I think the biggest thing to me from a guy's perspective that I talked about with that guy is your friend group. Because I mean, if your friend group's telling you, hey, that's not okay, you're more prevalent to be like, all right, I need to stop. But if no one was telling him that wasn't okay, then that continued and it's going to continue on. And hopefully we get to a point where it's either reported more when these things happen and or just not happening at all. Because just from the female side that you spoke about, where a lot of people don't want to report it because they're afraid they won't be believed and they'll lose their jobs. And then that's it for them. And that's one of the biggest things. So hopefully that changes going forward. And you brought up breaking barriers and things like that. We do have the Super Bowl in 2 weeks from now. And Sarah Thomas is going to be the first woman to ref in the Super Bowl down in Tampa, Florida. So I will say that is a very bright spot for the NFL. My only concern is that she is not in the middle of an omega controversial play that changes the game, because you just know how the trolls are going to be saying this is why women can't ref in the game. They just ruin the Super Bowl, blah, 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 blah. That's my only concern. I just don't want her involved in that, but I'm really happy for her and the NFL doing that. And hopefully then you see more women reffing Super Bowls, MLS Cups, NBA Finals, things like that. So what did you think when you saw that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible, but I also think it's, a testament to what she's done in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't just let anybody ref the Super Bowl. Like the NFL, takes into consideration how referee groups have done over the course of the season. So clearly that shows that she's done a really good job. And I've seen some mixed comments about, people who are happy and excited for her and people who obviously, just want to be trolls and talk about how terrible this is, yada, yada, yada. But one tweet that I found was really interesting was there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, she's done a really great job this season. And she's really only blown, one call over the course of the season. You can't say the same about a lot of other referees in the NFL throughout the entire season. And someone even added when she blew that call after the game, she owned up to it. And she said, yeah, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have called it, or it should have been something else, whatever it was. I don't know the exact play or game or whatever, but it felt like there was almost this change or almost this, feeling of people are fed up with NFL referees as it is. And to see her do so well, that almost it's like, maybe this is something that women should be a part of. Maybe that they're, able to focus more on what's happening in the game, and that they'll miss fewer things. I know that sets really high standards for women, but maybe there is something changing, or, people are starting to recognize that, men clearly make mistakes too, and that women can be successful in that environment, and that they're willing to own up for mistakes or things that happened and just get better and be better in the next game. So, I'm thrilled for her. And I think it's great that she's being given that opportunity, and that not so much that she's being given that opportunity, but that she's truly earned that opportunity to be in that role.
Yeah, I think she'll be fine. And with the people who don't like it or trolls like that, I just feel like they're wasting their energy and everyone else's energy. Look, if you, boy, girl, whatever you identify as, black, white, whatever you are, if you can do the job, you can do the job. That's what matters 100%. Anything in life. Shouldn't matter about the other stuff. If you are capable and you meet the qualifications to do the job, then do the job and get the job and get the opportunity. Don't discriminate just because this person's a girl or a minority or things like that. And speaking just on the NFL thing before we hop into another thing, because you shared it recently, we talked about the Washington football team having all their scandals and all that. And sometimes I feel like these hires with teams that have scandals just to go a different direction. But Jennifer King, She's set to be the first Black woman to be a full-time coach in the NFL. She's going to be an offensive assistant by Washington. So even though they're still riddled in scandal, they're making steps to be better.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's a Ron Rivera thing. I think he's very well respected in the NFL, and he has like a not a following, but he's been one that's been progressive and like some other coaches have basically said, if you can do the job, you're going to do the job, like the Bruce Arians, things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's great that she's being offered and taking that position and will be in that role for the Washington football team. I hope that doesn't get overshadowed or marred by any other scandals that come out. And then people, go back to that idea of, oh, she was only hired because they're trying to have some good PR or whatever other excuse they can make to say she doesn't deserve or hasn't earned that position. And, I hope that she does really well, and I'm sure she will do really well, because otherwise she wouldn't have been hired. And I hope that that's a trend we continue to see moving forward.
Yeah, agree. This next thing, I know Chelsea talks all sports. She loves sports. You guys have heard her podcast. She just loves sports. But this one it's not a sports topic, but it's more a women in general topic, which most of our podcasts have an overarching theme of just women in general. It's just we talk about the ones in sports. This is the article from the Washington Post. It's about Dr. Jill Biden, wife to now the president, because we're recording after the election, Joe Biden. And I'm going to give a brief, just one sentence thing about the premise of this, and I'm going to let Chelsea go on this. But the article is basically telling Dr. Joe Biden to drop the doctor, and because she's not a real doctor, she didn't earn it, blah, blah, and just be called Madam President Joe Biden. That's the premise of the thing. But I'm going to let Chelsea go deeper into this one, because I'm just a guy with a master's degree. Chelsea's actually going to be someone with a PhD with these letters, and obviously is a female. So we're going to let her really dive into that. And then if I have something to chirp in, then I'll chirp in. So go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah. So, this opinions article, and the ironic thing about the individual who wrote this guy has an honorary doctorate degree. So didn't even earn a doctorate himself, didn't go to school, didn't, work through the program, didn't write a dissertation to earn that doctorate. Whereas Dr. Jill Biden 100% did. And so, that was the first thing that was very, very ironic. But overall, the article is very sexist, and women are often told that we have to go and get those extra degrees to have any sort of credibility in whatever field it is. So, her going through and getting that, and hers is a doctorate of education. So it's an EDD, same thing as like a PhD, although some people will argue otherwise. But
yeah.
For the purposes of this, yeah, she went to school, she wrote a dissertation, she, did the whole thing and rightfully earned that title of doctor. And, for someone to come in and say, even though for someone to come in and blatantly say, you're not a medical doctor, you're not an MD, so you shouldn't use that title. Her degree literally says Doctor of Education. So to not allow her to use that title is ridiculous. But even worse than that, another article came out and said, was talking about why her dissertation was garbage. And, I took a lot of issue with that. And I read through the article, and it was talking about how many typos there are and how it's not relevant today. Well, probably not, because it was written in the early 2000s or even earlier than that. I don't know exactly what year she got her doctorate, but yeah, times have changed. Clearly, curriculum and other things. I don't know exactly what her dissertation topic was, but things are bound to change. And that's true of any dissertation that's written. We do more research, we learn more things. And so those dissertations don't always hold true. But the reality is that she wrote that dissertation. She did everything she needed to. And in my program and in a lot of other programs, they talk about there's no perfect dissertation, but a good dissertation is a done dissertation. And, she got her dissertation done. She filled all the requirements and therefore should be called Dr. Jill Biden. And when I, have my PhD, heck yeah, I'm going to make people call me Dr. Chelsea Police. Like, I earned that. That's me. That's not somebody else. I didn't go to school for 20 plus years not to have that title used. And so for someone who, God knows who this person even is, to come in and say, yeah, she just needs to drop that title and just be the First Lady of the United States. Well, she can be the First Lady of the United States and still be Dr. Jill Biden. Not to mention, she's still going to be a professor. She's still going to teach. And so even more so, using that title is important, especially for women in academia. It's a respect thing. And, unfortunately, you get a lot more respect when you have those letters after your name or you have that title. People don't feel like they can walk all over you. Again, it's this idea of credibility. And so it really got me fired up because I know I'm going to be in a similar position in a few months where that title means a lot more to me than just a degree. It means that, I have a voice and I have this place in academia or wherever I decide to go, and nobody can take that from me. And nobody can say that I haven't earned that title and I don't deserve to use it, because at the end of the day, I earned it, I worked hard, and I 100% deserve to use it.
So when this first thing came out, I'm going to be honest, I was just like, oh, Joe Biden's trending. I thought it was something to do political stuff. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to ignore it. And then I saw, I don't know if you posted something and that's Dr. Joe Biden. And then I saw other people post stuff and I'm like, okay, looks like it's not political. What's going on here? And I was like, well, now I got to figure this out because, I do all the different podcasts of all the different subjects with other people. So I'm reading lots of stuff every day. So I was like, let me read this. And then the guy's name is Joseph Epstein. That's him. Yeah. And the first line where he's like, well, this is an unimportant matter. And I was like, okay, so why are we bringing this up? Because to me, I was like, this shouldn't even have been brought up and to make to the hoopla it is. And then the lines where he's like, Dr. Jill Biden feels fraudulent, not to say a touch comic. And then he goes on to talk about his own experience, like, oh, I taught at Northwestern for 30 years without a doctorate degree. And then he just goes on and on. And to me, I just wondered why it was the fact that I was like, okay, I just don't understand why she just can't be called Madam First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. Problem solved. Cool. But the fact that he wrote in the Washington Post an opinion page a whole paragraphs about why she needs to drop it and because now she's a first lady, this, that. And then people agreeing. My thing always with these type of things is that there are people who agree with that, men and women. And in these situations, I'm just like, well, if you're a guy, you might have a wife who has a doctorate. Do you feel the same about her? Or if you're a woman, that's not helping the cause for the overall goal in society to see men and women as equal. And if you're agreeing with this guy, it's like, yeah, she needs to drop it. Madam First Lady is more proper. I think that's stupid. And then I came from a house where education is the most important thing, period. That's just how my parents were and all of that. So I can only imagine if my parents had a daughter and shoot, even if she got to it's still super important, just a master's degree. I know my parents were like, you better put that in every signature on any email that you got because you worked hard to get those letters behind your name. And if you do go a step further from a master's to a doctorate, you worked hard to get those letters in front of your name. So the doctor in front. So I just think that it's a huge discredit it's not about Jill. It's a more discredit to women and educate who strive for higher education, because if you're telling them that you've already stated that they need to do that just to be seen on a similar playing field, And if you're saying that it doesn't matter, then what hope are you giving the girls, younger girls who want to be doctors and teachers and scientists and things like that if their education doesn't matter? But it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And it's the highest woman in the land. And well, one of the highest because now the vice president's a woman. So up there, top 3 highest. So I just felt like the guy, I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what his editor was thinking, letting this go. And I just felt like it was the wrong move because now everyone thinks you're a sexist, which from that article, I don't know you, but it sounds like you are. So that's just my 2 cents from the male perspective.
Yeah, I recently have been joking about, once I do have my PhD, have that title, that anytime somebody sends us a card or, addresses something to Josh and I, that I want them to address it Mr. and Dr. because, normally when you see invitations and the man is a doctor, then it's Dr. and Mrs. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, use that title. Like I joke about it, and I'm obviously not going to force people to do it, but it's something to think about, and you would do that for a man. And so I feel like you should be doing that for a woman as well, especially if she's earned that title. And so, yeah, it's just this like differing thing. And, society in the past has said that women, number one, shouldn't be educated to begin with. And now, mm-hmm. I've been given this incredible opportunity and to get my PhD. And it's been difficult. It's been challenging, but I'm going to be thrilled when it's done. And I think it's a testament to how hard I work and the sacrifices that I've made and the value I put into education. So for someone to turn around and say, you didn't earn your title, you shouldn't use it, to that I say, F you. Like you don't get an ounce of my time because you aren't the one that earned that, and you aren't the one that gets to make that decision about whether or not I use that title.
Yeah, and just the thing on the invitation, it's funny because that's how it was on my parents' invitations and thank you cards. Because my dad's a doctor. So it's the other way. It should be like that too. And I think some of our people that we invited from my parents' side, though, the wife is a doctor. So, it's just you should do it as well. But yeah, he made something that shouldn't have been a story into a story. And he should have just not said anything at all. He just showed his true colors in that fashion. And obviously he didn't post a apology thing or anything like that. And you saw everyone rallying behind Dr. Jill Biden. And just for the memo or anything like that, if this was reversed and if it was Dr. Melania Trump and they did the same thing, we'd be talking about it too, because it's not really a political thing. This is a women's respect and education thing that just needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's something that we continue to deal with. And, oftentimes men have an issue with successful women and with powerful women. And that's an issue with them. That's, certainly not an issue with a woman, but, they will be the ones who, take the hit because there's a man who can't stand the fact that a woman's successful. And again, that's not my problem. It shouldn't be my problem. But if somebody has a problem with it, I'm going to hear about it. And, that's unfortunate, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's kind of the reality. And you just prove people wrong and you keep moving forward.
Yeah. And even off to that, you wouldn't be surprised, but maybe the viewers and listeners would be surprised of how many guys, if you just went in the streets and did a survey of like, how successful would you want your future partner or current partner to be? And they'll be like, oh, I'd want them to be successful, but just not as successful as me. So there's a lot of people who just want them to be a notch lower, which is a problem. Because that's from upbringing, things like that, and what social norms you've been around, saying that the guy always has to be more successful than the woman. And then that creeps into the workplace. And here we are in 2021 with those same issues. But
yeah, I was I was reading a Reddit thread recently about a guy who was talking about how, his significant other makes more money than him, but, only works a few hours a day. And that he was really upset that he works so hard, but doesn't, make a lot of money. And he was like asking if he was in the wrong about having this opinion. And people were like, heck yeah, you're wrong. Like, it sounds like you're jealous that, she has a much better job and that, she's working the system to where she can get everything she needs done and get paid more, whereas your whatever position you're in just isn't as lucrative. So you need to figure yourself out and figure out why you're having these feelings, because that's ridiculous. You should be happy that your significant other is successful and doing a great job and earning this living for herself and potentially for you if, you're splitting earnings or whatever. So people were just like, yeah, step off this high horse that you're currently on.
Were they married?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly. I think maybe they were engaged, but not married.
Well, if they're engaged the goal obviously when you're engaged is to get married, then he should be seeing it, because either or, no matter if you're making this or you're making this, but if you're engaged and you're going to get married, somehow that money's just going to come towards each other regardless if it's paying a mortgage. So you should be happy that they're making some bank, because then they could pay for certain things of the house where they still have some money left over and you could pay for certain things. However you do your marriage structure. But I mean, once you're married, even separate bank accounts, combined bank accounts, your money is going to be going towards your significant other in the ways of keeping the lights on and paying the bills. So he shouldn't be worried about that. But
yeah, that's a really good example of the things that, women have to deal with because of men who just can't handle when women are successful.
Yeah, which is crazy. But that's a whole other topic for a whole other, which we can talk about on our next one. But Chelsea, was there anything else that you wanted to hit? I'm pretty sure we hit everything in my notes for our first episode of 2021 together.
I don't think so. The U.S. women are playing right now, playing Colombia. So
right now? As of right now? Oh, as of recording. Okay.
Yeah. ESPN2. Obviously, people who listen to this later, the shameless plug won't apply, but,
Well, if it was on ESPN2, maybe it'll be the day they're listening and they could catch the rewind.
Yeah.
Or if they did know they played in the first place, they could be like, oh, let's see what the women's score was back on January 22nd. So
they could.
But with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast, wherever you listen, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube. Thank you, Chelsea, for being on. I know in our end of year one, which you were on, obviously, one of the biggest goals that we set as a group was to get more women on the L7C podcast. And even though her episode has not come out yet, we do have another woman we're waiting for her debut episode to come out. So that'd be the two of y'all. The goal, hopefully, by the end of 2021, because I think we have, if I exclude myself, I think 5 to 6 guys regularly, to hopefully even that out, because we're about equal podcasting rights around here. So that is the goal still. Now we have a whole year to reach that goal, and I know you've talked about a coworker who might be willing to come on, so hopefully we can get that scheduled in these next couple weeks and months, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear that there's another woman that has come and talked to you. So definitely looking forward to seeing how that grows, and glad to not be the only one anymore.
Yeah, you're the best. Still, you're part of the big three. You, Jacob, and Justin, the top listened people, but gotta sprinkle some more women empowerment in there.
As long as I retain the queen title.
Oh, that's you can't lose it. You were the first one. Like, it's not like you could be like, this person's here, so we're just gonna take your crown and pass it to someone else. Nah, once you have it, it's yours, and it's yours as long as you want it.
Fair enough.
And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. You guys take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.